Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Ordinary Voices studio. This is a safe and inclusive platform where ordinary people across the globe can meet up with like-minded partners and individuals to engage on issues affecting them, find solutions, and implement solutions together. My name is Kirsty Shakespeare, and I'm delighted to be hosting from the Trust for Sustainable Living and working with Global Youth Forum on today's episode. We have some fantastic guests with us who I'm going to invite to turn their cameras on, and will be introducing themselves shortly. But today we are going to be reimagining education for the 21st century. So welcome, everybody. It's going to get our screen share up. Fantastic. So welcome to Ordinary Voices, everyone. So in today's episode, we're going to be speaking about reimagining education for the 21st century. And I'm going to invite Peter Omondi up to share a little bit more about the work that Global Youth Forum are doing around education.
Right. Thank you so much, Kirsty. I know my camera is off behind the scene, but I welcome Val to tell members about what Global Youth Forum does generally. Val, over to you.
Greetings, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. So I'm the current Global Youth Forum ambassador, and so far GYF is working towards creating and securing employment for the youth, especially in the current in Kenya and Africa at large. So we have 4 main thematic areas. We have molding for work, we have ordinary voices, and we have also 2 other thematic areas. Peter, I think you can remind me the 2. So for me personally, I do run the Ordinary Voices session, and I'm glad to see Kirsty being our moderator for today's session. So at Ordinary Voices, we are able to interview young people and hear young voices that speak about the current issues that are affecting the young people. For the molding for work, we train through giving skills, life skills that the youth can be able to use at the workplaces to enhance their employability. And we have archery for the goals. I've remembered we do have archery for the goals. And also the last one, I think, Peter, you can share the last one. So generally the same, I used to be able to enhance the skills of the youth to be able to help them either create or secure employment in the current global world, I think.
All right. Val only remembers what she does, Ordinary Voices, which is our favorite for today. But look, we also have Football for Peace, which Val, that's always my favorite one. So we have Football for Peace, uniting football community and promoting peace everywhere. Now, I'm also interested to know what TSL does, and I know we do a number of things with them. So, Kirsty, did you want to jump on and tell us what TSL also does?
Sure, thank you, Peter. So the Trust for Sustainable Living is a global education charity. We're based in the UK, where we run an indoor rainforest visitor centre, and we have around 25,000 children a year from the UK come and visit our indoor centre to learn about the rainforest, sustainability, and how their lives in the UK are linked with rainforests and with global sustainability and climate challenges. And we also work globally with students and teachers in 117 countries around the world to engage those youth and provide opportunities for them to discuss important sustainability topics. And we have covered most of the SDGs, ranging from climate action to green jobs, to youth voices, to youth views for education of the future, and all kinds of different topics related to sustainability. So I'm excited to be with our speakers here today and think about some of the topics we've been discussing with youth, with you as well today, as we consider reimagining education for the 21st century.
Yes. And there we go. Now we now know what Global Youth Forum does. We now know what TSL does. Now let's find out what's next. Kirsty.
So according to the International Labour Organization, more than 1 in 4 young people in Africa, around 72 million, are not in employment or training. Okay, 2/3 of them are young women. And Africa is in the unique position of being a relatively young continent with rapidly growing youth population, which brings with it much potential, but also clearly some challenges. So as we're thinking today, we're going to be asking our speakers some of their thoughts on youth unemployment and how we can try to mitigate that. And that ties in obviously very clearly with Sustainable Development Goal number 4, which is quality education. And this is about ensuring inclusive and equitable education quality and promoting lifelong learning and opportunities for all. So this includes through free primary and secondary schooling, ensuring that everybody's got acceptable literacy and numeracy skills and access to higher education as well. So these are some of the things we're going to be thinking about today, and whether the curriculums that our guests learned about when they were at school have helped to equip them with the skills needed for the jobs that they're in today, and perhaps seeing if we can fill in some of those gaps as well. So at this point, I'll invite my speakers to introduce themselves. So Aditya, I'll start with you. Please introduce yourself. Tell us who you are and where you're from.
Great. Hello, everyone. Thanks, Kirsty. I hope you all are doing well. Greetings from India. I am Aditya Raja, an applied psychologist, TEDx speaker, researcher, youth icon, and a proud Indian. I'm really happy to see the kind of collective dialogue that is happening here. And I'm very elated to see Valdivia, Kirsty, Michael, Peter, Mohammed. So I look forward to have a very constructive dialogue with all of you. And let's talk about inclusion. Let's talk about diversity. Let's talk about sustainability a bit more.
Great, thank you for your introduction there, Aditya. And Valdivia, Virginia, I'll invite you up next.
Good evening to each and everyone joining us. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Kirsty. I'm Valdivia, Virginia. I'm the current GYF ambassador and also a program officer working with the Federation of Women Lawyers in Kenya. I'm also an advocate, and I work towards improving gender equality, SDG 5. And I look forward to the discussions we're having today. I'm glad to see, of course, Raja, Michael, and Mohammed, and I look forward to learning more from them too. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Valdivia. And Michael, would you like to introduce yourself as well and tell us where you're from?
Yes, good evening and good morning, everyone. I'm Michael Nyawino, the Executive Director of Christian Community Healthcare Foundation Kenya, abbreviated as COIF Kenya, based in Kitale. So I work as the Executive Director of Christian Community Healthcare Foundation Kenya, a consultant and also a graduate teacher. And also I'm happy to be taking part in this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael. And finally, Mohammed.
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Mohammed Athman from Mombasa, Kenya. I'm the founder and chief executive officer of Rafiki Peps. Rafiki Peps is a waste management company in Mombasa. So I'm very happy today, and I look forward to engaging all speakers, guests, and the organizers, to see how we can discuss of ideas and change this.
Mohammed, I think we are struggling to hear you. Maybe you turn your video off and then we'll come back to you shortly, okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Mohammed. Okay, so this is a big topic we're going to try and discuss today in just 45 to 50 minutes. So I'm going to dive straight in with some of the questions that I've prepared for you. Feel free to comment on each other's thoughts and comments as well to continue the dialogue. But starting out initially, thinking about the curriculums that we study where we're in school, and if you feel perhaps that the curriculum that you studied or what you studied in school has helped you get to where you are now. So Aditya, do you want to start us out on that one?
Yeah, sure. I'll answer this question, but one quote which deeply resonated with me when I was in my high school and further when I did my undergrads, it really stuck with me. And it is said by the former UN Secretary General, Kofi Annan ji. He says, no one is born a good citizen. No nation is born a democracy. And as a psychologist, let me tell you out loud, quality education can create that good citizen that you need. Quality education can collectively help action takers shape the world around us. Quality education can inspire a saint in a scholar, a citizen in a resident, an action taker in a student. So when I studied applied psychology, of course, as per the new National Education Policy 2020 in India, I got that impetus to think deeply, to foster skills, foundational skills, soft skills, and hard skills. And that is how I have become a public speaker, because of the contribution of my university. So coming from India, I think, yes, curriculum has changed and we are working on that little bit more with each one step. Over to you.
Thanks, Aditya. And what was it that you studied in school that's enabled you to get into the psychology field that you're working in? Were there any particular subjects that stood out?
Yeah, so when I was in my school, I studied science. And then after, in my class 12, I studied engineering graphics along with the science and maths. So I was piqued by the science part of things, and I built on later on that, based on behavior sciences and more so, naturally psychology came to me.
Right, so quite heavy on the STEM subjects, even from a younger age at school. Great, and Mohammed, I believe that the STEM is another area that's of interest to you, is something you studied in school as well. Can you tell us what you studied and what you're doing now, Mohammed?
Yeah, Mohammed, you can unmute.
I think I can now hear me well.
Mohammed, can you hear us?
Yes, I'm hearing you and I'm asking, are you able to get me?
Yes.
Okay, during my college time, I studied medical engineering. And what I can say is that today, from what I studied as medical engineer, it's a technical course, yes. But today I've really ventured into green business. And what I studied in college really did not prepare me fully to what I'm currently doing today. There are so much of skills that are not integrated in the curriculum that I studied during the college time. There were a lot of there was a course unit called entrepreneurship, but the way this course unit was brought to the students, how it was being passed to the students, it was not clearly, and you can feel that there are much of skills which they're very important to be equipped to youth, but then they're not clearly included in the curriculum. For example, the financial skills, most of the youth today struggle, even if they have ideas to expand or so that they can be self-employed, they can self-employ themselves, but then they don't have those skills that they can run their own ventures. And I think this is a mess with the curriculum, but I think with the new curriculum that Kenya is introducing, the CBC, curriculum-based the new system, I think it may bring some changes to the country, Kenya, and this will be one step towards eradicating the issue of unemployment to the youth. Yeah.
Great, thanks, Mohammed. And we'll pick up and come back on some of those missing skills a bit later on. So, Valdivia, how about you?
Thank you, Kirsty. I think I'd like to echo Mohammed's point. I do believe both of us, of course, coming from Kenya, I do believe that the education that I received did not exactly impact the skills that I needed in my current employability, at least in my current employment. And having been a volunteer for GYF, because I was a volunteer for GYF from the beginning of my first year, I do believe that actually shifted, or at least shaped, a lot of my interpersonal skills, especially in my current workplace. So I studied law in the University of Nairobi, and I do see the differences between some of my colleagues who studied at UON and some of my colleagues who studied at Strathmore. Strathmore is a private university for Raja, who's a new person from a different country. So I do believe the quality of education is also dependent on whether you're in a private school or a public school. Because for me, I do believe that, especially in our current Kenyan system, the more you're willing to pay for education, the better that education is. So in my experience, I don't think that the education I received really shaped my current character in my employment at the moment.
Okay, that's interesting. Thanks, Val. We'll pick up on some of those points later as well. And Michael, how about yourself? What were your experiences at school to get you where you are today?
Yes, Kirsty, just like the rest have shared, it is a common thing in Kenya that whatever you learn in school and the field of work are completely different. Whatever I did while I was in school, for example, I'm a trained graduate teacher. I taught for 5 years. Later on, felt that that's not what I really wanted to do. And given that I was working in a slum area in Madara and Korokocho, I decided to join the NGO world, formed my NGO, and started doing now charity work. Despite this, after becoming a high school teacher, I worked for an organization called KPA, Community and Progress Youth Empowerment Institute in Buruburu, Nairobi. And usually what we do is that we were imparting the youth with employability skills. So we conducted a survey to determine what the employers really want. So we will visit employers, get to hear their stories before we could start training the youths on the skills that the employers want, because we are training them for the job market. And what we found out was that there was a mismatch between what the youths were being trained on and the skills that the labor market was in need of. So with that kind of training, we were able to match the skills of these youth versus what the employers were in need of. And in that result, most of these youths were either getting employed to the places where we took them for employment. So in the current Kenyan system, I can say that the education system that we have does not give you what the labor market requires.
Great, thank you, Michael. So all four of you have picked up on this point, so I really want to hone in on this. What is the mismatch, do you think? What skills are we missing in school-based education that organizations, that companies are looking for? And it's interesting that you've all had to go through an NGO or a sort of outside of education institute to find and develop those skills and help young people to do so. So what are the missing skills that we need to be getting into sort of primary and secondary education? Anyone want to start us on with their thoughts on that? Open up.
Yes,
Yeah, sure,
I
I'll
can
take it.
go.
Okay.
Oh, it's okay.
Yeah, go ahead, Michael.
So I think some of the missing skills is that when you look at the education system in general, I think there is a lot of theory involved. The 21st century education requires one where the teacher, you take the back seat and the student be the lead.
Mm-hmm.
So as the teacher, it therefore means that this student needs to be financially literate. At the same time, they need to learn skills that are practical in nature. If, say, for example, you want to venture into technology, let it not just be in class, the theory part of it. Let it be practical in nature, as we are doing in Kapie. So in Kapie, you'll find that the students, if it's about catering, they'll be doing literally that in class. So that it sort of saves the learning process, as opposed to doing the theory. Then again, you're required again to go for attachment. At the end of it all, you'll not be able to remember what you learned in class, because by doing, you are able to remember faster compared to what you're just being told while seated.
Excellent. So it's the application of those practical skills within class that you think is really important there, Michael. And Aditya, you were going to share your thoughts as well, please.
Sure. I would like to build on Michael's idea. So in our Indian education system, we had the education system when Britishers came, they installed their education system. So what has happened now, India has already implemented and mandated National Education Policy 2020. And I'll tell you a brief thing about that policy. It is talking about transferring knowledge about the core culture. It is talking about the soft skill. It is talking about the social skills and also the emotional skill. Now you might ask, why is this? This is because we want to create knowledge around India's culture. We want to appreciate Indian culture. We also want to appreciate the knowledge traditions that we have. We have the Chaturdas Vidyasthana in the Indian knowledge systems. We also have a lot of other things which we want to highlight now. So technical skills, yes. Cultural skills, yes. And other things, slowly we are building it. Now the question is, why our ancient knowledge has such great economic value? Because if you go and see Ayurveda or other sciences that was there as per the ancient wisdom, we were passing on knowledge from one to another in this Guru Shishya Parampara. That means a teacher is passing the knowledge, a guru is passing the knowledge to his students. So that is how we have now envisioned in India. And slowly we are aligning ourselves with the 21st century goals. And with this mandate, I am sure appreciation of quality research, holistic education, and multidisciplinarity, and integration of tech will surely take us into that route. Over to you.
Thanks, Aditya. That's really interesting that you mentioned the cultural aspect there and the sort of cultural and indigenous knowledge that doesn't seem to be valued within many education systems, and actually can be extremely important and valuable both to those cultures and communities, but also to the wider community in general, particularly when you're thinking about some of the STEM subjects. So that scientific knowledge, that environmental knowledge, that agricultural knowledge that has been passed down for hundreds of thousands of generations actually plays a really important role, but perhaps isn't valued as much as traditional Western science or sort of more modern sciences or knowledge.
Correct. So that is where we want to have this bridge between science and spirituality. We want to have that bridge between segregated education and multidisciplinarity, so that we can have that thing in our way.
Great, thanks, Aditya. And Val, I can see you nodding.
Yes, he's actually raising very good points, and I like the fact that he's also mentioned about culture and the mismatch for me personally that I've seen. Allow me to start with that example. In Kenya, we do believe there's Alliance High School, which is considered one of the biggest high school that produces very smart students. And there's this idea whereby we say the A students work for the C students. And the essence of that statement is because you see it skills. The 5 C's of education in the 21st century include critical thinking and creativity. Those are things that were not taught in a lot of our high school education and our campus education. So you find most of what we learn as young people, we learn how to cram answers. So our work is to cram what we need so that we can be able to pass the exam. So we don't use critical thinking or problem solving. We don't learn how to come up with creative and innovative ideas. We don't even know how to properly communicate, which comes as a challenge when you actually get to be employed maybe in an office setup where you do realize that a lot of these skills are needed for you to have a more personal relationship with your colleagues. So I do believe the mismatch is because we focus mostly on how good is a student at cramming and how good are they at regurgitating the same answers in an exam setting. So for example, in my experiences, I'd mentioned being or working with GYF is what allowed me to actually learn critical thinking and problem solving, learning communication, things like character. Because again, at the end of the day, as much as we want to get employed, we also have to be employees that can be able to have a certain form of character or personality that is able to match with others. Those are not things that we are taught in our current education system. So I do believe the mismatch is in terms of what skills are given priority in a lot of these education settings.
Great, thanks, Val. Mohammed, I can see your hands up. Go ahead.
Yeah, also, I would like just to add on the mismatch part, the mismatch between the education and the job market search or job market needs. I would like to give an example of what actually happened with me. I did medical engineering during my attachment period. The things that I saw during the attachment was very different from what I studied in school. Like medical engineering really needs a lot of, you need to be well equipped with computer skills. Today, medical engineering, you really need to be very well in coding. But then during the studies, there was no even single class that was something called coding that we were taught. So it's something that we're going out there, then you'll be like, what is this? It's something very new you're facing in the real field or in the real world. So I think what is being taught in class is actually different from what outside the school, outside the class needs. Yeah.
Great, thank you, Mohammed. So I wonder, asking all 4 of you now, if you think that this disconnect between what employers need and what students are learning in schools is perhaps one of the reasons behind this increasing youth unemployment, particularly in Africa, but globally as well. Any thoughts on that? Anyone want to dive in? Aditya, go ahead, yeah.
So I want to highlight one challenge which came after COVID and then go to the question again. Is that okay with you, Kirsty?
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. So I was reading the UNESCO report and it is saying millions of students have dropped out or they're wanting to drop out after the COVID, right? So when we are talking about reimagining education, a lot of impetus should go on how these students are going to be placed back in the education system. So I understand the problem was COVID, the problem was contact and other things, right? But can't we do it? So that is where the idea of online courses comes into picture. If we can formalize that, we can give credits on that. I think that is where we will be able to fill the gap, because there has to be some implementation. Teachers need to contact the students. And the contact has to be established in such a way that the students can be graded on what they are learning or how they are learning. Soft skills are there, yes. Education is there, yes. So that is how I think we can fill that void which is there. That the gap has to be filled, and that is how I think the mismatch or the things which are going awry, they can be reduced. We can talk about collaboration tools, we can talk about ICT, information and communication technology, web-based meetings, and other things, so that the mass learning can happen. And the biggest mass learning tool is television and radio. If you can educate people through that also, that is really scientific, right? You can use that tool and you can enhance the level of impact that you can have. Over to you, Kirsty.
That's great, Aditya. So thinking not only what we're learning in schools, but how that learning is being delivered as well. So whether it's at home, whether it's virtually, whether it's in person, and how we can utilize the amazing internet that majority of us have got access to increase and improve that learning by perhaps cross-cultural studies and engaging with people in other countries as well. Yeah, great. That's brilliant. Thanks, Aditya. Any thoughts from the rest of you on perhaps if this skills gap is what's leading to broader unemployment in youth? Val, go ahead.
Yes, so I just want to add on top of what Raja has said, also when it comes to technology, especially in my context, in the Kenyan context, we have this very big focus of looking at education from a white collar aspect. That is, we are trying to teach the kind of education that will keep the young people in the offices. So one of the biggest things that I've seen, especially in the current century, at least in the current context, is that a lot of young people are learning the importance of technology. So now we have different social media platforms where you can learn a lot of things. In fact, for myself, I've learned quite a lot from TikTok compared to even the classroom. So I do believe that one of the things that we are learning as young people is that we need to find a connection between how we use technology to learn. And as he said, if we start validating a lot of these online courses, then it makes it easier for anyone, anywhere, to be able to get the necessary skills that they need. Because again, there's also this idea that if you're coming from a different institution, which is credited a bit more higher than others, then you have a higher rate of being employed. So for example, if you're coming from a top university, a lot of employers are likely to employ you because there's this idea that you're much more, knowledgeable, much more skilled. But when you look at it, for example, the young people who are not able to afford this education, they can still learn the same from an online course, and they can still be able to be equipped as much as everybody else. So I think there's also a need for us to focus and expand the job market, also looking at arts as a way of creating employment, so that we don't all start to flock in the office. We don't all become lawyers or doctors. Who is going to be, who's going to do much of film and much of other courses that are much more art related.
Great, thanks, Val. And Michael, you mentioned through your experiences that you've been working directly with employers to find out what skills it was that young people were missing, and you found that caused a great improvement in youth employment once youth understood those skills. Can you tell us more about that and your thoughts on youth unemployment?
Yes, now to reiterate on the same, like I mentioned before, we found that that mismatch, what the youths are getting trained on and what the employers are looking for are completely different. So you find that somebody who was trained, for example, in the area of sales and marketing, for that matter, but if they are given a product to be able to sell, they don't, first of all, have communication skills. They can't communicate. Mastery of the subject. Now, how do you convince someone to buy a given product if you don't even understand the product yourself? So these were some of the issues that were coming up. Now, when you look at the cases of unemployment, we have a lot of youths who we say they cherry pick jobs. They don't want to get their hands dirty, but they want to get money. So in this world of today, where there is a bulge in the youth population, it means we have so many people competing for the few opportunities that exist. Therefore, those who have not upgraded their skills, they stand a high chance of not getting that job. And when you also look at the cases of corruption, for example, in Kenya, industries being set up, it means those who are in government always will ask for a given percentage for one to be able to set up an industry that can employ so many number of people, so many youths. It therefore means that these jobs will be moved to neighboring countries, thereby creating more room for youth unemployment. Again, in Kenya, if you don't know anybody, it means the chance of getting a job for you is not that easy. You can't claim that, therefore, you are qualified. You can walk into an office, talk to someone and get a job. No, you must know somebody, or you should be able to grease someone's hand to be able to get a job. But now, again, when you look at the youth, we have youths who don't want to stay longer in the classes. For that matter, let's, for example, a course is taking 2 to 3 years. They don't want to be in a classroom for 2 to 3 years, but they want that money as fast as yesterday. So when you compare those youths who are not ready to take their time to mold themselves, their chances of getting employed will be dwindling. And again, still on the case of Kapie, the course that you are piloting was lasting for 3 months compared to the 2-year course that is offered in the regular program. Now we found that majority of the youths, they moved from the regular program to this short course because within 3 months, they are able to become marketable and get employed. But again, when you realize again, the expectations when you are going to school, and then the real life issues after completing school are completely different. While going to school, getting the training, you expect to get a job. And 2 years after training, you have no job, you have youths who lost hope in life.
Thank you, Michael. You raised some really interesting points around there about youth aspirations and the value of networks that I want to come back to, but I want to just give Mohammed a chance to share his thoughts on whether this skills gap, it might be coinciding with youth unemployment. Mohammed.
Okay, I really love and always say that the youth trained for jobs that does not really exist. Why I'm saying this is because there are causes like agricultural causes. We have renewable energy today. You may find that a country like Kenya, we have very small numbers of youth or people who are well trained in the agricultural sector and the renewable sector. At the same time, you may find that there are a lot of nurses or a lot of youth who are getting themselves into nursing courses, into driving courses, but they're forgetting that there are these which are very essential causes that we need to understand. We need to have a lot of people because agriculture is wide. And the agricultural sector is very wide that we need to involve almost everybody in Kenya to take part in agriculture so that we can increase the food production, of which also that will reduce poverty and will reduce hunger in the country. The new technologies that are being brought in agriculture. For example, there was a course that was being introduced in Mombasa so that youth can be trained on how they can use drone in agricultural sector. Today, the technology is growing very fast, and even youth don't even take that technology, then they can integrate it into these sectors. In renewable energy, as from today, very few youth have that skills on renewable energy, and may find that maybe there's a job advert for youth who are well equipped on matters of renewable energy. There are very few people who can come through to this job. Meaning, let me just like to Valdivia said, most of the youth look for white collar jobs. They don't want to take, they don't want to sweat for them to get their income, right? So I think we need to really integrate. We need to integrate practical skills so that you can easily employ themselves, rather than them studying courses which they really need to be employed than employing themselves. Yeah.
Great, thanks, Mohammed. Val, I can see you've unmuted. Go ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to also echo Mohammed's point and tie that to what Raja said in terms of culture. I think also one of the biggest things that we have to do is change the culture, especially for us Kenyans, where we look at, for example, we had this before 2010, there was still this idea that doing things like medicine, engineering was the big thing. So now you find in 2024, there are so many engineers and so many lawyers, but there is no jobs. So we have this idea that if someone is a doctor or a lawyer, then they're much more better than somebody who's an actor. And that is the reason why we still find so many youth being unemployed, because we studied law, and I know some of my colleagues who studied law, and they're still unemployed, despite it being considered one of the biggest careers that you can take. So I do believe that changing the culture from, the idea that there are certain courses that are better than other courses, and especially looking at things, innovative ideas, arts as a form of really improving the unemployment, because I do believe a lot of young people, and especially when you look at the clubs that we were part of in high schools and in campuses, you do realize that there's a lot of talent, but there's no market for that talent. So the few actors are the same actors that we see from 2015 to 2020. So the young people that are really trying to come up are not able to do so, because again, most of them are poor. And as Michael has mentioned, the incentive is also money. So if I'm studying law school for the 6 years that I've been there, when I come out of law school, I expect to get a job that is going to pay me as much money as I need to, be able to reach my dreams. But then you realize when you get into the job market that you need around 10 years just to be able to get to the level that some of these lawyers are. So again, a lot of the youth are ending up just giving up in the process. And that's why you find there's also high crime rate in a lot of these high poverty areas, because most of them have become very discouraged and they feel like there's no place for them. And so they decide, if I'm going to make money, I'm going to make money either way. So if we change the culture of how we look at education, I do believe then we can create a bit more opportunities for young people to feel like they're able to grow, especially, in terms of financial, because a lot of us, especially in Kenya, we are motivated by money, because a lot of people, again, come from poor backgrounds. So if we find a way to be able to create an environment where young people can be able to pursue different courses, and both, if I'm an actor, I'm still as well paid as a doctor, then I do believe we can be able to eliminate this unemployment problem in Kenya.
Great. Yep, go ahead, Aditya. Thanks, Val.
I would like to echo Val's idea. So what I have also seen why this Indian massive transformation has come in education, the logic is, if a student is becoming a professor in English and there is another student who is becoming a professor in Sanskrit, Indian language, both should be getting a pay parity, if not equal pay parity and the equity. So the idea over here is we are giving incentive for not only Western but also Indian knowledge systems. So that is not limited to Western, but also it talks about a little bit more about Indian knowledge systems like our Vedas, Vedangas, Darshanas, Puranas, Itihasas, Dharma Shastra, and other things. So these are talking about the civilizational skills, right? So if India is able to do this through this change in education, we will be able to generate scholars who are not only well versed in English but also well versed in Sanskrit, and we should take pride that we are doing that on the Indic front. Over to you.
Thanks, Aditya. So I want to pick up on a couple of the points that you raised there between you. So I'm picking up an idea that we in some way need to sort of adjust both the cultural expectations and what sort of young people are aspiring to culturally, because that seems to be very different and not always realistic with the job market, but also perhaps readjusting youth expectations at a younger age so that they've got a better understanding of what the world of work looks like in terms of the range of jobs available, what's attractive, what's going to be financially available to them as well. Does that sound like a sort of fair summary? And where do you think as adults perhaps we can play our role in that, and then perhaps what the role of schools would be as well? Any thoughts? Yeah,
Sure,
Aditya, go ahead.
Yeah, I think you have put it out well. My idea is very simple over here when I'm trying to simplify this. The idea is scholars should be appreciated irrespective of whether they are coming from English, French, or Indian languages. So the idea that becomes, it is ki our own local culture, local customs, along with the foundational and soft skills, they get bolstered. That necessarily mean an Indian like me can come here and say, hello everyone, मेरा नाम आदित्य राजा है. So you need to appreciate that Hindi bit of me as well, along with the English bit. So when you see about the psychology, we have Indian psychology. When you see about the philosophy, we have the Indian philosophy, and so many things. So we want to appreciate that and also carry all the good that we have got from the English traditions.
Thanks, Aditya. Michael, did you want to chip in here as well?
Yes, just like the rest, improving our culture. I think parents also have a bigger role to play because most of the courses that students take when they get to college or universities, 99.9% are influenced by the parents. So parents will always want you to go for a course because they saw somebody's son or somebody's daughter who did that course and therefore they are doing well, just like Virginia said before. So you find that as a youth, while going to college, you pick on a course that personally you don't like, but you are doing it to please your parent because after all, they're the ones who are paying your school fees. So at the end of it all, you get dejected. And when you fail to get employed, you'll blame who? You'll blame the parents. While on the other hand, poverty also plays a bigger role in that push for the youths to look for work. Because I'm of the idea that after going through college or university education, there are a number of organizations that are giving voluntary work. So you can volunteer for 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, then get the right skill that is now needed for that job market. From there, you'll become easily marketable. But since most of these youths come from poor background, where, first of all, they cannot even afford to stay on their own in a given town where they are volunteering. So they'll have no option but just to look for work, which is not coming forth anytime soon.
Great, thanks, Michael. Yep, go ahead, Aditya.
I would like to add one element to this. We are giving more incentive now after this mandate that has come in India. So we want to appreciate scholars who are doing internships. We want to add some incentive behind it. The reason is we want to groom them for the future. It is not only about maintaining the now standard that if you're not earning, maybe a little incentive will push you and motivate you. Maybe you will be able to interact with people who are doing similar things in that niche. So you are not left out. You are not having an economical disadvantage. Rather, you are having some support system and value system which you will pick as you grow up. So this is how all the small internships, all the key projects, capstone projects and all, they can scale. Because my public speaking started when I talked about debates, when I talked about turncoat, when I talked about block and tackle. So many of things that I have picked it from the Western culture. So I can't say that that is not important. I say let's have more incentives and opportunities for all those scholars who want to appreciate and do things differently. If they want to become a lawyer, then it will take a lot of time, as Valdivia has said. And in India also, the process is a little bit similar. What Michael said is absolutely right. So you need incentives, and not only incentives, but you also need a world of opportunities behind it. And with the MOOCs and with the other interventions, like India has Swayam and a MOOC type of a structure. So we are able to push our professors and students into that learning zone. And psychology always talks about habit building. So any one of us can build good habits, nice habits, business habits, whatever habits you want to build, and you can slowly transform. And that transformation is the key, because if you have to reimagine education, you have to give incentive for things that you want. You cannot just wait for the market to respond. You need to just put your collar up and say, hey, I want to do this change and I am responsible for it. Over to you.
Great, thanks, Aditya. And I think probably leading on from what you've just said, Aditya, really well, I'm going to ask each of you now, if you were president or prime minister of your country, what reform within education would you take to try and help to address youth unemployment? So you've mentioned their opportunities and incentives, Aditya. Is there anything else you think as president or prime minister you'd like to really reinforce in your country within education?
Sure. So this is a bit backed on humor. So I will make all the internships paid. So there will be no unpaid internships.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important thing. We've mentioned the importance of finance and the fact that a lot of students aren't necessarily in a financial position to take up opportunities, but without that applied experience that Michael mentioned earlier, it's really hard then to get the job. So actually having that finance available to help support students gain the practical skills, practice those soft skills we've spoken about of communication and networking opportunities, and having that as a funded position is then hopefully going to really help them get into employment in the future. So that's a great one. Thanks, Aditya. How about you, Val? What would you do for education reform?
On my part, apart from what Aditya said, I support that 110%. And then there's also the issue where I would actually look at some of these teachers' bodies. I think there's a teachers something, not, there are different bodies that make sure that teachers are well equipped. So I think in my part, I would make sure that there's a certain standard, that every teacher that goes to teach any form of subject in any school doesn't have to, they have to meet a certain level of how should I don't want to say intelligence, but a certain level of expertise, exactly. So that, for example, it's not about the money that determines the quality of education that you get. Because as I'd mentioned earlier, that if I was to go to a private school, the kind of opportunities that I would find were very different from the ones that I got having been trained in a public school. So if I was the president, I would make sure that the standard of education is the same in any form of institution in Kenya. And then I would also provide, I would reduce the monopoly when it comes to some of these boards that handle art-related jobs. For example, if there's a MC, it's a Music Society of Kenya, I would make sure that's not the only corporation that is dealing with music and art in Kenya. I would have other corporations so that we can be able to create that competition and be able to improve the quality. Because if it's only one person who's managing one area of art, then it means whatever they set or the standard they set is exactly what everybody else follows. So apart from the incentives of paying the internships and also ensuring that the parity in terms of the pay gap is limited, there's also that part of ensuring that even the bodies that manage education are able to meet the standard that is going to be taught to each and every young person in Kenya.
Great, thanks, Val. And that really comes back to that core point of Sustainable Development Goal number 4, inclusive and quality equitable education for all. So thank you, that's a really great one. Mohammed, how about you? If you were Prime Minister, what would you do for education reform in Kenya? Or President?
Okay, if I could be the President of Kenya today, there were like 2 or 3 things that I could really change very fast. The first one will be making sure that entrepreneurship is a compulsory unit from primary, secondary, and college. I could make it compulsory. Not today, most of the colleges and universities, it's an optional course, and it's only taking 4 months, then you are done with it. So I could make it compulsory that everybody should study entrepreneurship in details. So after that, after college, he or she can really be well equipped with entrepreneurial skills. The second thing that I will really do is to make sure that youth from the rural areas also get the same support, the same. I could also see the youth in the rural areas are the same with the youth in urban areas, because today in Kenya there are a lot of places where there's no electricity, no internet access. And we have a lot of youth there. They are not recognized. So a lot of opportunities, they're just given to the urban youth. So this could be an option for me to do very quick, that I can even make sure that in each ward, there is a tech hub where youth can access internet for free. They can access the digital tools so that they may also follow up with what the world is doing, because there are some, they don't know even when the country is going to take another elections. So these are the 2 things that I could really start with them. The last one is to turn the education system into a really practical education system. Today, something that I've experienced myself with the current education, the CBC, there was a kid who was asked to make a computer. Imagine as a grade 4 student, then he went further, taking a box, then cut it into a shape of a computer. Then he presented that box to a teacher. Then he was given 80% because he cut the box into a very nice shape of a computer, of which I think this it's a nil effort, because the box with a computer is 2 things different. I think it could be very important, or it will be very useful if there were like screws, screwdrivers, the screens, and even the outer cover of a computer. Then the student was to be told, then now just combine all these parts to form a computer. I think this is also something better than a student taking a box, then making it looks like a computer, then given a lot of marks, which is, I think, it's really painful. So these are the three things that I could really look into as the president of Kenya.
Great, thank you, Mohammed. Aditya, I'll come to you quickly and then I'll go to Michael. Go ahead, Aditya.
Sure. So I think after hearing Mohammed, I just want to highlight the fact that UNESCO has already stated 23.8 million children and youth are now deprived. So what I want to be mandated is take-home test or MOOC learning along with the learning management system and all, they can be mandated so that students who are not getting access to the schools or the universities, at least they can take home their learnings or use technology if there is. Otherwise, take home should be mandated. That's what I wanted to share.
Great, thank you, Aditya. And Michael, what would you do as president of Kenya to provide education reform?
Yes, if I was the president of Kenya, the first thing is that I'll work with the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development together with the university boards to be able to stamp out irrelevant courses. We have courses that are churning out students who cannot fit anywhere. So they have to go and take other courses to be able to fit in the world of today. Secondly, to add to what Mohammed has said, entrepreneurship and financial literacy to be mandatory from primary to university. Because even those youths who are unemployed at the moment, they don't know how to manage the little money that they're getting. We have now people can get money from Fuliza, from so many apps that are charging over 12% per month. But with the right financial skills, you are able to plan well and know where to go for these loans. And also in the line of ministries, if I were the president of Kenya, every government project, every ministry in the government, I'll ensure that at least half goes to the youth. In the sense that if a road is being built, now what percentage of youths are being considered in that project? Because along that line, we are empowering them with skills so that the following day they also become engineers, road engineering contractors. You're able to get contracts and be able to employ other people, as opposed to a case whereby you have those who've been serving in the government for the past 60 years and they reach retirement age and you hear that they've been appointed into other boards. But the same positions where they are, you still get, we call them wazes, people who are in their 60s, still getting reappointed, while you have youths with the new skills on how such ministries could be managed.
Great, thank you, Michael. So if I can try and summarize the key points you've all made, it's about having relevant courses that deliver practical skills and opportunities for practical skills through funding, delivered by well-trained and well-equipped teachers across both rural and urban communities to make education both quality and accessible for all. So I think that sounds like a great plan for education reform. Unfortunately, I think we all know it's not going to be quite as quick as we would like it to be. So we've got a couple of minutes left. So I'd just like you to share with us, if you could summarize each of you in one line, perhaps, or one sentence, what your call to action would be for education institutes or organisations that are involved within education in terms of ending youth unemployment. So Val, do you want to start? Do you need a minute to think about it?
Yes. Before I jump to the call to action, allow me to just also add one point that I would like to do as a president, is that I would make volunteering a mandatory experience, especially after campus, because I believe that, especially in Kenya, we have a very bad attitude towards volunteering. But in my experience, and a lot of the things I've seen, especially in the workplace, volunteering really shapes the character of an individual. And I can use my personal experience in the sense that being in campus, there are certain skills you don't consider important, interpersonal skills, for example. But when you come to a work environment, you realize there are different personalities and you have to adapt to dealing with those personalities. So the good thing with volunteering, it will act as employment, but it will also create the environment where a young person can be able to learn how to manage different personalities, different attitudes, what it means to actually be relied upon, as a staff member or as an employee. But in terms of my call to action, I would like to especially speak to the young people that you are the major person who's going to influence how your future pans out. So sometimes, especially as we've said, as much as you're calling on the government or the education system to be different, it's not going to take, it's not going to be a quick process. It's going to take a while. But in that time, as a young person, it is your role to be able to go out and learn, what else can I do to improve myself? What are some of the current required skills, especially, for example, in the green economy? It's a thing that is really, it's a very big industry, but it has very few people who are actually very well skilled. So if it comes to maybe things like climate change, how can the young person be able to use this opportunity to learn more about climate change, learn more about what can I do to be able to either create mitigation measures or to be able to create adaptation measures? So I would call upon the young person, the young people who are listening to us, that take this responsibility on yourself as much as, yes, because there are young people who've even finished all the way up to campus and they're still unemployed. So it is upon you to just decide, I want to do better for myself. What is it that I can do as a young person with what I have to be able to improve my skills so that I can be able to become a more, what should I say, a more selling point in the current economic climate. So that's my call to action.
Thanks, Val. How about you, Aditya? Have you got a call to action for young people or for education institutes or organizations?
Yeah, so I'll just say in one line, you have to go for flexible education and inclusive education. You have to make it a reality so that you get knowledge from various aspects. You also get the skills. Over to you.
Great, thanks, Aditya. Michael?
My call to action is that we need to empower the youths with skills today, and they will build a better world tomorrow, as the skills are the currency of success and the youth are the future millionaires.
Great, thanks, Michael. And how about you, Mohammed? Have you got a call to action for us?
Okay, before going to call to action, my call to action, I really love what Valdivia said, compulsory volunteering. I really love that one. Could really change a lot. And my call to action is, I would really love the organization and educational institution to gang up together, create a pool of funding, support ideas, and then they fund these ideas with the starting capital so that they can, the youth can self-employ themselves and also employ their fellow youth. Yeah.
That's a great one. Thank you, Mohammed. And I believe we've got an audience with us. If there are any questions that any of our audience want to put to our speakers, we've got a couple of minutes before we have to finish off. Just start out by saying a huge thank you to Val, Aditya, Michael and Mohammed for sharing your thoughts there. This is a big topic of conversation. We were never going to get it all in and get all the answers or the solutions within 45 minutes, but I think we've had a really good go at getting some of the key points out and putting some key suggestions forward. So are there any questions? I can't see anything in the chat. There's been a few comments in the chat supporting what our speakers have been saying, so not getting any questions coming through. No, okay, I'll leave. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm also just trying to look at, there is one that came from Aditya, making hybrid learning cool.
Yes.
Yeah, and then somebody, Mercy did say free internet will really help. So we are looking for free internet, and we are also looking for hybrid learning. And then what else is there? Yeah, those are the few ones that I have captured so far. They're like just some good positive comments coming along, just to say they are Kirsty. Yeah.
So making funding accessible so that opportunities become accessible to everyone, I think is the key takeaway here.
Yes,
Gareth,
that was from Justin. Yeah, Gareth.
Yeah.
Yes, hi Kirsty.
Hi,
Really, for me, it was. I just wonder. Here in the UK, a number of years ago now, hours that people spend at school were extended considerably. Is this something that globally people think would help generally if they increase the hours? of the young people in schools?
That's a good question. So what's the standard in Kenya and India for schooling hours? And do you think extending it would help?
And so the other piece is that not only do they extend the hours, but also you have to remain in full-time education until you're 18.
Yeah. Val, do you want to have a go at that when you're unmuted for a second?
Yes, I wanted to actually respond and say, I don't believe that increasing the hours would actually work, because based on how I've seen, especially because I was in the 844 system before the new CBC system, we used to have the closer you are to doing the main exams, the more hours you spend in school. And that was a very exhausting process. It was something that I wouldn't really encourage. I wouldn't even put my kids through the same thing, because I do believe as much as we want to train the young people, unless we change what we are teaching them, if we have relevant courses, then having them in schools for longer periods can work. But if it is still the same things that we're taught, I don't believe that extending studying hours could actually work for us in the Kenyan context. Unless Michael or Mohammed want to share the different viewpoint.
Yes, I think I'll go with Val, because we have parents who are, for example, single parents, or even those who are all working, both the man and the woman, they are all working. So it means they are sending their children to school early in terms of early age, 3 years, 2 years, so that while the child is in school, the parents are at work. Now imagine once they have completed primary, secondary, in high school or college, you still want them to stay longer in that education system, taking into account that education is expensive. It means even the parents who maybe they organize for some fundraising for their child to go to school will have to go and look for more money for them to stay longer in school. Or for example, those who are able to get higher education loans board, that loan you can only be given within a given period. Once that period has elapsed, you need to start repaying. It means during that period you'll be extending in school, you have to look for other sources to maintain you with your education as you are progressing.
That's a really good point. So I think it comes down to not necessarily how long you're spending at school, but the quality of what you're learning while you're there. There's no point in increasing the number of time or the age of students from young to old when they're at school if the quality of education is not improving, because they're not learning anything more by staying longer, and it's potentially costing more for parents. That was a great question. Thanks, Gareth. So, okay, well, it's 2:05 my time in the UK, so we're just a few minutes over. So if there's any final closing thoughts anyone wants to share, I'll invite the speakers to give us any final closing thoughts, and then I'll wrap the session up. Thank you everyone for joining us. So Val, anything you'd like to finish off with?
I'm still trying to process that thought in a few seconds.
Okay, I'll come back to you. Aditya, go ahead.
Sure. So after hearing all the perspectives, I just have one appeal that I have to make to all of you. See, a lot of students and youth, they are going to be out of education as per the UNESCO's report. 23.8 million is not a small number. So what I really want you to do, you have to start empowering your family, your society, then your state, then your nation. And it all starts by taking ownership. If you can impact a life by collaborating and giving your knowledge or giving your skill, if you can package that up and you can start impacting from the family to the society to the state to the nation, that would be a real thing. So start packaging, start conversating, and add to that collective dialogue, and together we are strong.
Great, thank you very much, Aditya. How about you, Michael? Have you got any closing thoughts for us?
Yes, I think my closing thought is that let each and every person, organization, institution play their part. However little it is, but at the end of it all, it will make a big difference. Now, to other funders, donors, let us support these small organizations, because in your own eyes, they might be doing something small, but that something small, at the end of it all, it will be impactful.
Great, thank you, Mike. Yeah, the power of many. Val, go ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to also finish off with having a more inclusive environment, especially in terms of education. I do realize, based on the work that I've done in terms of promoting gender equality, that there are some cultures and some places where the women actually don't go to school. So you find very young women around the ages of 12, 13 actually getting married and having a family. And so some of this, they're still children and they're still young and minors. So I do believe if we can create a more inclusive environment where even women can be able to involve themselves in a lot of this, then we can be able to actually change the financial and economic ability of a lot of them. Because again, based on the work, allow me to mention a little bit about the work I've done in terms of gender-based violence. We've actually realized that the lack of financial stability is actually what makes a lot of these women prone to gender-based violence. So if we do create an environment where a lot of these young girls can actually access education, then we can also be able to limit some of these bad habits, some of this unemployment and poverty areas, because a lot of these women who we are saying, as Michael has mentioned, a lot of these single parents are actually women. So when you create an environment where a lot of these women are able to access good education, quality education, then we can even improve the quality of education that their children get. So we even create a better environment and in fact, even better experience in terms of what education we are teaching them. So I think for me, that would be my last statement.
Great, thanks, Val. Not something we've had time to speak about today, but thinking about the role of gender equality as well as quality education is a really important one, and perhaps another discussion that could fill another 45 minutes in future for sure. Thanks, Val. Mohammed, any closing thoughts for you to finish us off today?
Okay, I will finish by saying that let us individuals, communities, institutions, and organizations positively empower the youth. To empower a single youth, it goes a long way to empower almost a pool of youth. So let's all strive in empowering the youth. I really love what JY Global Youth Forum is doing. That's why I've been following them over the period, and then I'm now a volunteer there. I'm a new member this year, and I really looking forward to a lot. Yeah.
Great, thanks, Mohammed. Well, thank you very much to all of our speakers today, Michael, Valdivia, Aditya, and Mohammed. Thank you everyone for joining us as we've been reimagining education for the 21st century. This has been Ordinary Voices, hosted by the Trust for Sustainable Living and Global Youth Forum. Thank you very much, everyone. Until next month.